Well, hello! Today we have a very special guest joining us. She's a four-time Sela Award winner and a Carol Award semi-finalist, and she has three books out, including one new release that I read a few weeks ago and really enjoyed. She loves to write Regency romantic suspense novels filled with passion, danger, and secrets. So welcome, Hannah. I am so glad to have you on today. So what I wanted to just start with was ask you a little bit about how you got into writing. So can you share a little bit about your journey to publication and just share a little bit about that story?
So I feel like I have always liked to write. I just didn't realize it because I remember when I was in school and we would have writing assignments. My mom would come in the schoolroom like hours after school was over and she'd be like, "You can be done now. Like, you don't have to keep working on that story." But when I was 11, I started we grew up watching Westerns all the time. We just loved, cowboy scenes. And I started writing Wanted Dead or Alive posters, and I would describe the bad guy, describe what he looked like, what he did, how much money was on the wanted poster. And I just really enjoyed thinking up stuff from nothing. So it kind of started there. And then when I was 12, my mom said that my second cousin was writing a book. And I was like, "Oh, that's so cool." I was like, "I'll try that." And literally the first chapter in, I was like, "This is the best thing ever." I just love it.
That's awesome.
That's when I realized officially that I liked to write. And then in my teenage years, I self-published about 10 books under a pen name. I didn't market any of my self-published books hardly at all because I didn't know what I was doing. But they were all written under a pen name. And so when I was talking with my agent, right before she signed me on, she was like, "Yeah, these sales are really low." And I would kind of explain to her that, I was in my teen years, didn't know what I was doing. And it was also a pen name that I was ready to sever with. So it was super easy to just forget about those books and move away from the pen name and just start afresh. So
Yeah, that's the nice thing about doing a pen name if you're self-publishing, because if you actually get into the traditional, you can just cut it off. And looking up your name and your books, you don't find any of that, which is probably nice for you so that you don't have to go down and take everything down quite the same amount.
Right, exactly. And then in 2019, I went to a writers conference and made some appointments with agents and went to classes and kind of learned a lot more what I needed to do different, how to, market myself. And a few years later, I ended up getting with the agent that I'm with now and got a contract from there. So that's kind of the story.
That's really cool to look at because I feel like I'm kind of in the season that you were right before this of just going to the conferences and all of that. So it's cool to see how you went from that to having some books out. So the next question that you kind of touched on a little bit with the Westerns was, how exactly did you get into writing historical fiction?
I've always loved, anything old. Antiques, Westerns, anything that's just old-fashioned feeling. So when I started writing, I pretty much jumped right into the Western genre and the 1800s. And then while I was self-publishing, I did experiment with different genres. I did some contemporary and just a few different things. But my heart was always more into the historical because I just love imagining what life was like for people back then.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love writing historical. It's really I love the research part. It's really fun to dive into the whole world of that and have that as the basis for everything. So on the topic of historical fiction, do you have any tips for writing historical fiction and getting into all of that?
I would say maybe the biggest tip I would have would be to do enough research up front or, while you're writing to where you feel like you're really in whatever time period you're writing in without going overboard. Because I've kind of seen both some historical fiction is so heavy with the historical details and it's every chance they're bogging it in there. And so I think there's a happy balance that every historical author tries to find that's like not too much or not too little.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I've read some novels where it feels like you're almost reading like a historical curriculum or something, where it's just like they're always throwing in a new historical term and then they have to describe it, and it kind of brings you out of the story sometimes.
Right, it does. I agree.
So another thing that I really enjoy about your stories is that I feel like you weave in a really beautiful romance in all of them. And I don't feel like it's forced or too much. And I've just really enjoyed reading the romance in your books. So I just was wondering if you had any tips for actually writing a romance in your stories.
What I usually try to do when I'm writing a romance is, I've got the plot, I've got the main guy and the main girl, and like I'm determining at the beginning of the novel, these people are meant for each other. They're going to fall in love. But as I'm writing, like I try to, like, even though I'm determining they're going to fall in love, I feel like they as characters need to determine that themselves. So like the guy character, I always try to think like, what is it about this girl that is different from other girls that would specifically make his heart fall for her? Is it like her looks? What about her is like filling his needs kind of? And then vice versa for her, like try to figure out what about each other is special enough to make them want to spend the rest of their life together.
It weaves in really beautifully in your stories. I feel like, I don't know, when you read a story and you know that there's romance, you always tend to set up the guy and girl as the reader. You just want them to end up together. But I feel like it does actually happen very naturally in your stories, and I really enjoy reading them. So one of the last questions that I had was, if you had one piece of advice that you could share with your younger self or to a younger writer, what would it be?
It would probably definitely be because, I mentioned earlier that I had written 10 books and self-published in my teenage years. And at that point, I was pretty much, I decided to write novels. And so I did it. I had no kind of, I hadn't really gone to writer's classes. I hadn't, had a critique partner or anything. I just did it. But looking back, I wrote those 10 books and then went to writers' conferences and found out all this stuff with my craft that I needed to work on. So I feel like it would have been very beneficial earlier on in the journey to get a critique partner who could specifically tell me, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Because there's so many things that you literally just would not know if somebody did not tell you. This is kind of like an unspoken writing rule. No matter how much you read, if you don't actually hear that, don't do this, you're not going to know. So I feel like that was once I went to the writer's classes and had a critique, and that just really took my writing to the next level. And so to get that earlier on would probably be my biggest advice.
Yeah, that's really good. I've gone to ACFW twice, and it's been so helpful to get to meet with the different professionals and talk through things, and I've definitely learned a ton. On the topic of writers' conferences, because you mentioned the writers' conference that really helped you, do you have any writers' conferences that really impacted you or you would recommend to other young writers?
I haven't been to ACFW yet, although I would like to. But most years I go to the Blue Ridge Christian Writers Conference in North Carolina, and it's amazing. Every year I'm like, this is so good. The first year my mind was like, my brain hurt because I was like, I have so much information right now. But everybody there, the staff and just other writers that you meet have been so encouraging and helpful, and everybody just feels like kindred spirits.
Yeah, that's really cool. I had a friend who went there and she said it was just amazing. Yeah, it's the kindred spirits. These are the people that have the same heart, and it's all woven together. Really amazing. Could you share a little bit about your new release? Because you just had one come out in the last couple weeks, right?
October 1st, yeah. So my new release is Garden of the Midnight, and it's a Regency romantic suspense, kind of gothic vibes. It's got English manners, murder mystery, forbidden love, Scottish Highlands, sword fights, all that. So
I love it. I've got my copy here. I finished mine in like 2 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really fast.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you. So lastly, I guess, where can people find you and keep up with you and your writing?
So I'm most active on Facebook and Instagram. And then I also have a website and a newsletter. So any of those places.
Awesome. Well, I will put links in the description so that people can check you out and stay up to date with your latest projects. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was really great to chat with you, and I look forward to reading whatever book comes next.
Well, thanks so much. It's been so fun. Thanks for inviting me to do the interview.
It was really fun to chat with you.